people like this, using weapons like that, including cowboys like this guy. And they're causing conditions like that. Now those people doing that type of thing have created the need for the United Nations to provide humanitarian aid to the people of Bosnia.
On the 23rd of May 1994, the New Zealand government made public its decision to commit an augmented infantry company to United Nations peacekeeping duties in Bosnia. Kiwi Company would be made up of 250 infantrymen, engineers and armoured transport crews. They would take part in New Zealand's first major international military deployment since Vietnam, nearly 30 years earlier. And this time, for the first time, they would be serving as a company with UNPROFOR, the United Nations Protection Force. The success or failure of the Army's first venture into the uncertain territory of peacekeeping hinges less on experience and more on the ability of the New Zealanders to turn themselves from soldiers into peacekeepers. It's 10 weeks before they leave for Bosnia. The job of welding together Kiwi Company and preparing his young soldiers for keeping the peace in a theatre of war falls to Company Commander Major Dave Gaughan. At 35, he's been in the Army for 15 years.
We are equally, if not more, prepared than most troops that go across there. We've had limited opportunity, admittedly, with regards to time, to prepare ourselves, but the general training that we get is commensurate with the requirements for that theatre.
One of those requirements is the selection of liaison officers. These men will assume the difficult task of negotiating between the warring factions. Engineers officer Captain Mike Bewist, with 5 years in the Army, is chosen as one of 4 company liaison officers.
There is certainly a degree of risk. There is no point in denying that. Given the fact that we are a small team, we'll be required to travel by ourselves out into areas. I suppose a phrase that we use is Indian country. But I don't think the risk is going to be any greater than what it is for the remainder of the contingent as well. The risks that we will face, every soldier over there has faced and will face.
Those risks were hard to assess, even for Platoon Sergeant Solly Vaitoru. Solly is 37 with 8 years Army experience, but this is his first posting to a war zone, a war that Solly and his family see on the news night after night.
From what we've seen on TV, from what they've seen on TV and what we've been briefed on, there is a possibility, there is a risk, and where we go, there is not that much of a threat, but however, it can get worse. And I like to think quite positively that I and the guys are going over and the contingent we'll go together and we'll come back together.
July 1994, and Kiwi Company travelled to England. Here, training begins in earnest with the British Army. As part of UNPROFOR, the British already have 2 years' experience of the worst of the Bosnian War behind them. Here in Salisbury, British troops play out the role of the Bosnians, giving the Kiwis their first real taste of the difficulties of acting as pacifiers rather than soldiers.
I accept your position. I accept your position, and you must accept mine.
It has given us a different slant to the way we look at, I guess, the aggression side of war. We're now looking at a very definitely a peacekeeping orientation, and everything is de-escalation and mediation, and that's not something that we generally train for.
Why is this vehicle coming forward?
Does it not trust
Machine with the guys.
Why are they coming forward?
Почему эта машина двигается вперед?
Radio.
It's the radio.
Знаешь?
I think it's far more complex than regular warfare. You don't know really who your enemy is. In fact, there are no enemies as such. And it's not just a case of identifying them, and if you're the first person to shoot, then you've got the upper hand. It's a little bit more complex than that. It's not going to be as physically demanding as other theatres, but it's certainly going to be mentally demanding.
Please, Commander, for everybody's sake.
For Mike Fewest, the English exercises are a dramatic introduction to his role as liaison officer.
You became all of a sudden very aware that we are training for something totally different now from what we normally train for. We are not there to be aggressive, we are there to facilitate, to mediate, to negotiate. And it is a totally different concept, and it's the junior level of commands that are going to be tested to their limits on this particular deployment. It's the most challenging thing that I've had in my career to date, particularly the job of liaison officer. They're the people that deal with any of the incidents that occur. We can be called out to anything from a busted water pipe to sorting out a major dispute between any of the factions.
You must remove the Croatian from the bandit for pass to convoy to come. Still. It's gone. They take kill two of the United Nations drivers.
I think we've all grown with the experience and the training that we've had, and I think in that respect we enjoy it more right now because it's actually going to happen, whereas the rest of it we're training for something that may happen. This is going to happen. It's happening now, and I think that's important.
Experience has shown that even peacekeepers can be drawn into a war as unpredictable as the Bosnian conflict. These exercises in England never let the Kiwis forget that. There may be times they have to act as soldiers, dealing with real, not imaginary casualties. 10 intensive days at Salisbury give the New Zealanders a new sense of the reality of their mission, and a clearer idea, too, of what they still need to do. From the exercises in England, Kiwi Company returns home to Waiouru to complete training. One of the major difficulties they will face is the language barrier. Regular classes in Serbo-Croat give them a general introduction, as well as some specific and possibly useful phrases.
That's very important, for you. Ne pucaj. Can you repeat after me again? Ne pucaj. Ja sam
I'd like to add my special welcome to the parents of the single soldiers and perhaps even the parents of some of the married soldiers who have made the time to come along here this morning. I know that the soldiers themselves will really appreciate that. Now this morning, I'm not going to give you...
As departure date for Kiwi Company draws near, Lieutenant Colonel Graham Williams, the officer responsible for overall command of the contingent, begins a series of welfare briefings. These are designed to prepare the families of soldiers for the inevitable trauma of separation.
Now, in there we have the countries of Serbia, Croatia and Bosnia. Now, the main problem with this conflict over there is that there are three warring factions, the Serbs, the Croats, and in Bosnia we refer to them as the Muslims. The main purposes of us going over there is to create the conditions under which humanitarian aid can be delivered and distributed to the people of Bosnia.
It's the best briefing I've ever been to.
For Solly's wife Eileen, separation is a way of life. But this is the longest deployment they've ever faced. And for 6 months, Eileen will be managing a family of 9 children on her own.
When I'm home, I like to, I set the rules, this and that. And as soon as I walk out the door to go away, it all changes. It's gone. And I come back and why isn't this being done like this and that? And I then realise that there will be changes when I go away. And I suppose on this deployment being longer than normal, there will be a few changes, whether it be with the family or myself.
We have to put up with the everyday stress things, like kids and school and work. So to me it's just another walk alone here.
But this time, there is the added worry of the dangers of Bosnia.
I remember the day he came home, and I was cooking tea at the time, and he said, "Oh, I've got something to tell you," and I thought, no, I know what it is, I don't want to know. I was really upset when he told me, but like I said, if you carry on about it, it just makes them feel worse. So you sort of dry your eyes eventually and swallow all the resentment for being left at home with all the kids while they go off to pursue their careers and get on to the job of supporting them, which isn't easy sometimes. But I'm sure as time goes by, it'll get easier. I think it's really important that I support him. He has other lives to look after or that are under him. And I don't want him worrying about us, which would put his life and other lives in danger. We're just there to support them and make sure their minds aren't worrying about what's going on at home, what disasters are erupting with the bank books, you know, so they can concentrate on their job. That's how they'll come home, I believe. That's how they'll get back, and it's not through worrying about stupid little things at home.
To move from this location, and will move from this location.
Kiwi Company is a young company with an average age of only 20. Nearly half of them will be leaving behind wives and children. How the distant home situation affects the performance of men in the field is an age-old problem for the Army, and an added consideration for Company Commander Dave Gaughan, as he himself contemplates 6 months away from his 3 young children and wife Anna.
Some people are anticipating having a very hard time, and I think if they can't square their own life away at home and feel confident in handling themselves and their family at home, then I don't think that they'll be able to offer a lot of support to their husbands.
It's probably going to be one of the more significant effects, potentially anyway, on individuals. Those that are having hard times with their marriages anyway, certainly at more risk of being welfare or having welfare problems and being concerned with their situation back home than others who are perhaps more confident with their situation in New Zealand.
I don't think that we will, because we've been around that a bit longer, you know? And any of that kind of emotional damage from separation has happened in the past, and it does happen, but you do just have to grow through it, and you either survive it and get stronger because of it, or else it will break the marriage up. So,
It's not so much separation that's likely to cause any change in the relationship, more so perhaps if there was a real traumatic incident that occurred over in Bosnia on the operational aspect that changed me as opposed to us in our relationship.
do you think you'd change?
I don't know.
Mike Buist and fiancée Julie Milne's situation is slightly different. Only recently engaged, the Bosnian deployment has cut across their marriage plans. Julie, unused to army life, is finding the concept of enforced separation even worse than the potential for physical danger.
I don't actually have any concerns about his physical safety, not real concerns. I mean, obviously I will be worried about him, but I know he's going to come home. I know he's going to be okay, and it sounds really silly, but I really don't have any concerns. It's more the emotional and psychological effects of the situations he's going to be faced with that I'm concerned about. He's not going to be the same. I just hope that they're not too deep and too severe that they can't be talked through and dealt with, and that essentially I do believe he will still be the same person.
While their families prepare for separation, the soldiers continue their intense training. It's August, 4 weeks prior to departure, and a full-scale exercise is staged at Waiuru that will consolidate everything they've learned. Kiwi Company is ordered to set up a UN base at Helwan Camp in the central North Island. From there, their main job will be the escorting of convoys to distribute aid to the surrounding villages. Here the local Muslim villages are played not by English soldiers, but by locals from Waiouru and Linton. By now, the tension surrounding the contingent's departure seems to have spread throughout the community, injecting an air of reality into the exercise, which soon finds soldiers and civilians alike testing their role to the limit.
Does anybody in this crowd here speak English?
No, it's English. No. I said no, I don't.
Miss Maria, what seems to be the problem? She wants food.
As the scenario of starving villagers demanding food unfolds, spontaneous action becomes the order of the day. Before Mike Bewis can properly begin his role as liaison officer, negotiating with the Muslim nurse Maria, the unexpected arrival of a convoy at the camp gate signals the start of chaos. As is often the case in Bosnia, the UN food convoy is besieged, not by soldiers, but by hungry civilians. For Soli Vaituru and the other soldiers, the test now is how they handle a situation that is violent and unpredictable. Gradually, the convoy guards calm the situation. While Nurse Maria and the other villagers maintain a dogged protest on the road, the New Zealanders locate the village leaders. As night closes in, the long hours of negotiation bring a compromise solution for Mike Bewis and Dave Gorn.
He also say 8 o'clock from he changed time to 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock?
He sleep. If you're not going to go out at 8 o'clock. No longer welcome. No longer welcome.
With the promise that food will be delivered to them in the morning, the villagers finally allow the beleaguered convoy through. The first day of the exercise ends successfully for Kiwi Company. But in this exercise, as will be the case in Bosnia, anything can happen. By the evening of the second day, another testing scenario has developed. The Muslim mayor has warned that he is in danger of losing control of the village to the local militia. Mike Bewis' skills as a negotiator will be tested to the limit if military confrontation is to be avoided.
With that, it is more than likely, from what the mayor said, that the village is likely to be overtaken by the militia at some stage in the near future. He is losing control of it.
Well, look, that's not really a concern of ours. We cannot interfere with village politics. You know that.
Fine by that, it's just going to affect our flow of our vehicles in and out support at the stage. Okay, I'll get that incident report filed as soon as we sort it out.
But the issue of the militia goes beyond just village politics. Heavy weaponry previously surrendered to the UN by the Muslims under a peace agreement is being held at the Kiwi camp. And now, the militia want those weapons back.
We are aware of they are your mortars, and we wish to discuss this with you. It will only take a short period of time. We would like to speak to you about this.
He knows where his mortars are.
Sir, we know your mortars are here, and we wish to talk to you about this. Sir, we would like to speak to you about this.
Tense and angry, the militia leader waits, not for Mike's reply, but for the bargaining expertise of the Muslim mayor.
You realise the agreement that we've come to, yourself, your General Mikovic, General Risoc, and the UN. They have agreed
that
I
any
don't
weapons
care
are
what
handed in-
UN do. I want mortars. My men need mortars. You know protect.
So who are you going to be fighting?
We need protect village, children, women.
If your village is still
These
there-
not enough. These not enough. Tanks. Mortars. Mortars. We need mortars.
The agreement says that we can't give them back, that unless that has been agreed or ratified by General Milovic and General Rasoc.
The OC has gone back. He is speaking to the higher headquarters again. 30 minutes, we will have an answer for you.
Your last 30 minutes for the day.
It is natural for people to hold animosity or to treat you poorly if they hold you responsible for something that happens. And obviously in this case the mayor held me responsible. It doesn't really matter whether or not he was justified or not. It came across that way. He was pretty vocal about it, and I had to bear the brunt of it.
5 mortar, 50 minuten. Mit Commander, sprechen zu me.
He is hard commander.
He is a very hard
wants
commander.
mortar now.
He is, I have my orders. I hope that he can appreciate my situation. We cannot I'm aware that he's an angry man. We are also in the same situation, but we are under orders.
2 mortar.
We are under our orders. We cannot let those mortars go.
With that, the camp is barricaded. All routes in and out are blocked by the militia. The scenario is complicated even further with the news that an armoured personnel carrier struck a mine, injuring a New Zealand soldier. For Mike, the priority now is to get an ambulance to the Kiwi casualty and somehow get him back for treatment.
All I'm asking for you, as a soldier to a soldier, is for you to allow us to go and get our soldier and heal him. As a soldier to a soldier. Can I ask that, please?
Dankeschön, Dankeschön. Ist nichts. Ist 2 Mortar, dann ja, 2 Mortar, hier, then ja.
What he said is, you can go through, you can do the casualty, but you're not coming back in until he gets his mortar.
Commander, you're putting me in a very difficult situation. You are bargaining with one of my soldiers' lives. I will tell you honestly now, I do not like that.
Like it or not, the ultimatum is Mike's only option. He must let the ambulance go, hoping that by the time it returns, his negotiations with the militia commander will have met with more success.
I don't like it. However, we have to deal with it. We have a New Zealand soldier as a casualty. We got the ambulance through, and that was a priority, so the casualty has been taken care of. My personal feelings about how the people are dealing with this can't really come into it.
You know, he still has wounded. He still has wounded
The
from...
commander is really beginning to irritate me. He cannot get this.
This is no good. We cannot argue, not you and I.
We are very, very upset. As upset probably as you are. Because we have casualties and you had casualties. We get as upset with this negotiating as you do.
Always is breaking. Always talk. Always talk.
It is annoying, it is very frustrating, and it is even more frustrating for the soldier on the ground. In that particular situation, used to having spoken with a number of the villagers over a period of 2 or 3 days, had developed something of a understanding of the way the village hierarchy had worked, and I was of the opinion that Nurse Maria had a great deal of influence upon the local militia leader. We spoke to her, pleaded to her, used the case that we had got them food, we bought the medical supplies, and we had evacuated her casualties earlier on, and asked her to go and speak to the local militia commander, which she did, and we got the ambulance back through. Dobro, dobro, thank you very much, Commander. Dobro, dobro. Sir, I'll leave you to bring your vehicle. Okay, you drop that person off.
But the Kiwis' problems for the night are not yet over. Around midnight, the issue of the mortars and protection for the villagers savagely explodes. Before the Kiwis have time to react, the battle is over, leaving Mike to deal with the aftermath.
He come? You get Captain Mike now. I come say, Danko, Captain Mike. You see, my village gone, dead. All day, I tell you, all day, save, come, kill. You do nothing. Now dead. I say, Danko.
We are not to get involved in any of the fighting. You know that. I know that. Do not put the blame on me.
I am fed up of talking. You talk, you show paper. Useless.
I'm fed up of talking
UN,
to you, Mr. Mayor.
useless. Big tank, do nothing. Stay safe, do nothing.
Mr. Mayor, we are both know. We are not here to fight the war. We are not here to fight. We are here to look after the people when the fighting has stopped. If the fighting has started again, it is not our job to fight.
I no take this no more.
Mr.
You
Mayor,
take,
you don't
you
have
take
to
my town, my empty town, yeah? No one here now. You take, give UN present, yeah? We go hills. We don't want UN no more. Muslim, do not like UN. Nah, you go.
The one thing we have to know about being a liaison officer is learn patience. And it's a virtue which a lot of people I don't think really appreciate. I certainly thought I possessed it. I'm finding that I'm going to have to learn a lot more patience if I'm going to be able to do my job properly.
Every single individual that goes across here will grow and develop both in confidence and just in their worldliness. And there'll be a significant change that the New Zealand Army will identify once we get back with those that go across. They'll be more confident in their own ability, the majority of them, I hope all of them. And they'll be far more professional as soldiers, and I think they'll be far more understanding of the human side of war than perhaps we are at the moment, just because we haven't experienced it.
And they'll know whether they want to stay in the army too, I suspect.
For many in Kiwi Company, UN service in Bosnia will be the high point of their careers. With all their training completed and the issue of their UN kit, the company is ready to go. Kiwi Company's public profile is important for the Army. For the first time since the Second World War, New Zealand soldiers are setting off to the world to take up duties unclouded by controversy. Unlike the Vietnam War, where protest and division marred the soldiers' departure, Kiwi Company seems to have unequivocal public support.
A number of us have been in the Army for a long period of time now. We spend a long time training, and we want to get away and do a job. We want to show the world exactly what we are capable of doing.
Stand back! Hey!
You know, if I wasn't going and someone else was selected, deep inside I feel regret that I wasn't going, I wasn't selected.
The satisfaction that we will get from seeing a country going quite literally from the ruins of war and up to some sort of normalcy, we'll get a great deal of satisfaction from that. And the level of satisfaction will vary, and it will also vary, I think, for individuals. But also, professionally, we'll get an awful lot out of it as an army. It's sort of one pace forward for, might be 3 or 4 backwards, but that one pace forward is significant, and the satisfaction that you get from that one pace, I think, is worth the effort that you put in for it. And I think we'll also have a significant impact on the Santici area that we're going to, because Kiwis are unique and they haven't been in the country before.
We have a reputation to live up to from just living up to the expectations of the people back here in New Zealand while we're away. Also living up to the expectations of our forebears. You know, our ancestors have done remarkably well overseas. And I think that is probably because of the nature that the way Kiwis are Kiwis. That's the people that we are. And the guys have got that in the back of their mind. They're aware of that. But then again, I'd have to say to you that I have complete and utter faith in those guys.
That's the life that they lead. That's the life that they want to lead. These guys are adventurers, so let them adventure.
It's not going to be easy for those left behind, but it's not going to be easy for the guys going either. On a personal point of view, professionally, I think it's a brilliant opportunity for all of them.
It's been a long time coming, and we just can't wait for them to actually go. It's actually, we find it more stressful just waiting for them to depart.
Finally, the day of departure arrives.
Have you?
On the 15th of September 1994, the contingent drives from Linton to Auckland. There they board the UN charter flight that will take them away from family and familiarity for 6 long months, and into a situation that none can predict. Hours after leaving Auckland, Kiwi Company are on the tarmac at Split Airport in Croatia. As they leave the plane to pick up their kit, even the rigours of a non-stop flight can't dull the quiet delight of finally arriving. But this is not the end of their journey. Delays in the preparation of their camp in the Vitez pocket of central Bosnia find the New Zealanders temporarily stalled in the unexpected holiday atmosphere of a UN transit camp at Dole on the Croatian coast. The war seems no nearer than it did in New Zealand. There is little to do but bravely battle the boredom and be briefed yet again on the ever-changing situation.
What I want to say now too is that anybody here who writes a letter home and says that we're getting shelled, mortared, shot at, is a liar. But right now, there's nothing much happening in the VTS pocket. I think the best way to liken the United Nations presence here is to liken it to an occupation army in Europe in the Second World War. There are a lot of the locals do not believe that UNPROFOR is required any longer, because life has returned to a semblance of normality for a lot of them once you get into Bosnia. Be aware of that. Not everyone in this country likes you. You'll be judged as being capable of the same standards as the worst United Nations soldier that is over here. Okay? No one notices the good things that you do and the good performances you put in. They notice the bad things. There are only 250 of us here in the theatre, out of a total force of 50,000 soldiers. It's 50,000 soldiers that are deployed around the borders between Bosnia-Herzegovina and Croatia. So while we think that some of the things that are going on are very important to us, in the big picture of UNPROFOR, we are very, very insignificant. That brings me on to Santici camp. And I think you may have all heard that there are problems in Santici camp, and the problems are in getting it completed.
Up country, an advance party of Kiwi engineers are struggling night and day with these problems, under the command of Mike Buist.
We were led to believe back home that a camp would be ready for us, and the British engineers were undertaking it. Unfortunately, due to the UN system, that was not the case when we arrived. The British engineers were responsible for the camp, and again, you have to be diplomatic in terms of stepping on people's toes. What it ended up being was either actually out on the ground working with the guys, making some changes to the plans to bring them up to what I thought was an acceptable standard, and trying to get hold of stores, getting around, making sure that every avenue had been tried, and getting hold of the essential equipment that we needed. It was brought home very quickly to me, the frustration of working within the UN system.
Back in Dole, as the days wear on, the bulk of the contingent find different ways of dealing with the frustration of waiting. The contingent's Maori concert group and supporters sharpen up their haka skills, and no matter the time of day, they're never short of an audience. The camp is the Kiwis' first introduction to the multinational nature of the peacekeeping effort here. And for the other troops, the haka is their first introduction to the Kiwi presence. Before the war, this stretch of the coastline known as the Croatian Riviera would have been swarming with tourists. But there are no tour parties cramming the roads now. For two of the contingent's 3 cooks, Lance Corporal Paul Dodds and Lance Corporal Jason Turner, a trip to the picturesque seaside town of Markaska is a chance to slip out of military mode. Like many in the contingent, the cooks make the most of their time here. Once they hit Santici, they'll have their work cut out for them.
Ours is quite as cooking side, it'll be quite interesting. Feeding 250, and we're normally only getting, what, between the 3 of us, we're normally meant to feed 50, you know, each person, so that's 150, so we'll be busy.
Hopefully we'll get on a few patrols and stuff, but our main job is to provide the catering service, so yeah, it'll be a bit boring if we're in the kitchen all the time. I want to get out and see some of the country. Pivo means beer, we've got that one so far.
No, this is not at all what I expected. I don't know, they sort of said a different sort of people. It's incredible. They're so Western, you know. It's very, very different indeed. Very different. Yeah. I haven't been overseas at all. This is my first deployment overseas since joining the army. Yeah. It's a pleasant change. Very pleasant change. Yeah. I was looking forward to getting into theatre. I still want to go up there. Still different, but this is holiday town. This is where I want to stay.
Back in New Zealand, people had said they were sort of like a peasant sort of race. And here, no, nothing what I expected. As you see, this place here is just absolutely beautiful. Sort of, when I got here, I was itching to get in country into theatre and do a job, but now I want to stay here for my whole 6 months, you know, eating pizza and drinking beer and looking at the scenery, yeah.
By the end of the week, the holiday is over. With the arrival of their weapons and the issue of ammunition, the contingent are ready to move into Bosnia, at last, and into a different state of mind.
It's very important now that we switch on to weapon safety. All of you with pistols, it is even more important. My weapon is now live. I can flash it around, I can do what I like with it, I can cock it, I can shoot someone. We all now have the ability to shoot somebody, to point your weapon at somebody and kill them, either through intention or through accident. When we get on that bus, it's magazines on, and concentrate on weapon safety. Let's have no accidents.
Finally, they drive across the Croatian border into Bosnia. It's taken 5 months to get the New Zealanders to this point. During those months, the complex face of the Balkan War has changed several times. Now, the Peacekeepers' job in the Vitez region will be to uphold a fragile truce, a federation between two of the three warring factions, the Bosnian Croats and the Bosnian Muslims. But as the buses drive further into the country's broken heart, the size of the task ahead gradually begins to register.
Incredible how much damage there actually is, and that's not shown on TV or anything like that.
My first thoughts on my phone, these guys have been through a lot of shit. It's, you know, houses leveled to the ground, burned, bullet holes everywhere, absolutely wasted. Like when we drove up, you'd go past villages, there might be one or two houses that were burnt out or shelled, but you went through Mostar and the whole city was just wasted. It's incredible. The whole city laid out before you with no roofs and no walls and just total devastation.
Driving through Mostar for the first time for anyone, that's got to be an incredible experience. The devastation that is plainly visible, and to see people still living in those conditions. Yeah, it was a good eye-opener as to what to expect over the following 6 months.
The ruins of Mostar, once one of Yugoslavia's most beautiful ancient cities, remind the Kiwis of why they are here. Over 150,000 people have died in Bosnia since 1992. More than 2 million people have been made homeless by the ruthless ethnic cleansing. And now, every hour on the road brings Kiwi Company closer to their own confrontation with that stark reality. Passing the ruined city of Mostar, Kiwi Company drive on to Vitez, a Croat pocket in the center of the war-drafted map of Bosnia, and their new home, Santici Camp. Under British command, Kiwi Company is sharing the camp with Dutch and Belgian soldiers as part of the UN Protection Force, UNPROFOR. But the Kiwi Advance Party have already marked out their territory. After the day-long bus journey, Sergeant Solly Vaitura's first task, like the rest of his men, is to sort out his own accommodation. It's a long way from the comforts of home.
There's a mattress.
As night falls, the soldiers settle into the porter cabins that will be their barracks for the next 6 months and begin the endless tasks of cleaning their weapons and kit. In the operations room, Company Commander Major Dave Gorn briefs his officers on the changing military situation.
Landing in the center of the square. There were no casualties. And in the Vitez area, there have been 10 firing incidents. On a more serious note, in the area of Sarajevo, there have been 2 direct attacks against French bat and can bat, both involving anti-armoured rockets, 1 vehicle being destroyed. And in relation to that, General Rose is considering retaliatory airstrikes, and if that does occur, then everybody will go to state amber.
In the mist of early morning, as the engineers labour on with the task of building a camp virtually from scratch, the situation changes. The threatened NATO strikes against Serb positions around Sarajevo, only 60 kilometres away, become a reality.
Go back to your rooms, grab your flak jackets and helmets, guys. We've gone to amber.
In case of reprisals against the UN, the camp goes to amber or yellow alert. This means everyone has to don 15 kilograms of flak jacket. For Engineering Sergeant Charlie McFarlane, this compounds the difficulties he's already facing.
It is very restricting, and I don't think we're going to get quite the workload out today, now that we're at amber, as we did when we were at green. We just haven't got the manoeuvrability, and wearing the weight of the jackets are incredibly heavy and restricting, so we're just not going to get what we want out of it. We'll work the same period. We'll work up to 6:30, 7:15 tonight, but there's going to be more rests. There's going to be more time that the guys have to rest, just to recover from the weight of this stuff.
The engineer's first rest of the day comes at breakfast time.
See Charlie's hand, eh? No. Real bad, eh?
With the Santici kitchen still incomplete, All the Kiwis' food is prepared at the nearby British camp at Vitez, where conditions are even worse than Santici.
Having a look at the other camps, some of the other camps I've seen, we're not prepared to put up with the conditions that they want, and our commanders are helping us out quite a bit. So as you can see, even just the hard base on the ground, you know, we're not prepared to put up with mud and crap on the ground.
As the days pass, the alert state reverts to green. The flak jackets come off, but weapons are still carried everywhere, even to the toilets. And as the engineers continue to expand the camp, Dave Gorn prepares his troops to take up their real duties as peacekeepers.
Just relax and listen in. In 4 hours, we will be taking over operational responsibility for the Busovac AO. I just want to remind you with regards to what that means in relation to our mission here in Bosnia. It is a peacekeeping mission. A peacekeeping mission. It may not be what some of you joined up to do. It may not be what you actually came over here to do with regards to what the situation is currently like here in the Busovac Kachuni pocket. There is no war. You're not going to see combat. And if we're really lucky, you won't even see any acts of violence. It is a peacekeeping mission, and peacekeeping and peace is the highest plane that any soldier can achieve. And that's what we should all strive for. Remember that when you're out there on the checkpoints, day after day, week after week, month after month, and nothing is going on. That is what we are here for. And some of you are going to become very disillusioned about that. But it is the highest level that you can ever achieve as a soldier. Peace.
At checkpoint 5, the Kiwis take over their first official duties from their Belgian predecessors, manning a checkpoint between the Croat and Muslim areas. It's a simple ceremony that includes the handing over of an unofficial mascot. Back at Santici, construction work on the long-awaited kitchen proceeds, until at last the New Zealanders are able to eat in their own camp. As in the British mess hall, weapons share table space with food. But unlike the British, officers and other ranks eat together here. While the British at Vitez camp appear content to live with mud and discomfort, the Kiwi soldiers make the most of their surroundings and turn Santici camp into a home away from home.
Made this bunk ourselves.
Kiwi ingenuity comes to the fore.
Oh, this is my hoochie. Or bunk. All that timber there, we had to sort of borrow most of it.
And the difference between the Kiwis and the British is reinforced yet again, when their first formal parade before their British commander gives way to a traditional Maori haka. Kiwi Company will be taking over peacekeeping duties from the Belgians. Joint familiarization patrols give many of the Kiwis their first look at the leavings of war.
Everywhere you'll find crosses. The people here are very religious. There were several attacks on this hill that people have stood very close to God.
The area is ringed with a complex system of trenches marking the confrontation lines between Croat and Muslim, and the land in between is literally a minefield. The extreme danger posed by these mines has already had its impact on one member of the Kiwi Advance Party, Corporal Rick McKee.
Yeah, when I first started working here, went out with the British, just sitting by the side of the road relaxing, we heard an enormous explosion. We looked up, saw a huge puff of smoke. A few minutes later, a young 15 or 16-year-old girl came running up to our position. She was absolutely covered in blood. She grabbed the local policeman that was there, who in turn grabbed the British section commander, a medic, and myself. We ran up about 300 or 400 metres to an old bombed-out house. and there were 2 bodies lying in the long grass next to the house. And what it was is these girls' parents were in there. The father was cutting grass for some reason, God knows why, and the mother was picking plums from the plum trees when, with his scythe, he had triggered a tripwire on a mine, an anti-personnel mine, and that in turn had cut him in half, and it taken all of this out of this girl's mother.
As the patrols increase into the surrounding hills, the New Zealanders become more and more familiar with stories of loss. Talking to villagers from both sides through their Bosnian interpreters, soldiers like Lieutenant Andrew Fox begin to appreciate what this war has cost in human terms.
Generally, they're sick of the war. No one knows why it started. They don't know what they're fighting for, apart from to protect their houses. But just about everyone has lost brothers, fathers, sons. Yeah, and no one knows why it started. They just can't believe it.
Just across the road from Santici camp lives Anto Vidovic, a Croat. Like many others, the war has cost him dearly.
For 1.5 months, my son and my daughter-in-law lay dead on a heap up there by that house. So it happened that my house was burnt down, both my houses. And they killed my 2 sons, a grandson and a daughter-in-law. And they wounded 3 of my grandchildren, 2 in the stomach, 1 in the arm. There was no army here. There were only people defending their houses.
The consequences of war are equally tragic for the Muslim families of the surrounding villages. Hazim Chichak's family paid a high price for defending their home.
One of my sons was killed over there, you know. If only you knew. There is never any joy in anything anymore. It's just nothing. It's...
There's nothing now. What can you do? And what a child we've lost. You saw him. You saw what he was like. But what can you do? What has been has been. You cannot change the skin.
But in the towns within their area, like Gorniva Kuf, changing the country's damaged skin seems to be an integral part of the job for liaison officers like Mike Buist. Mike's job is to coordinate aid projects throughout the area, but his first task is to learn the lie of the land from his British counterparts.
This is slap bang in the middle of the confrontation line. Croats to the right, Muslims to the left, and if you look around you, you can see the kind of damage that happens when you have a lot of small arms fire in a community like this.
Yeah. The scars of war go deeper than damaged stonework. Mike's first visit to the town includes an introduction to the wary suspicion with which the local militia regard the UN. It's a reminder that not everyone likes the peacekeepers, or even sees them as necessary.
We've seen the chairman of the ops dinner. Yeah, we've seen Mr. Garacha and the police chief. Okay. Yeah, do widzenia.
Very nice to meet you.
The peacekeeping presence is necessary if the Federation of local Croat and Muslim politicians is to maintain the fragile peace that now exists.
This is Captain Mick, who's the liaison officer in Vitez, that's now responsible for all of the humanitarian aid for the whole area.
You're dealing with 2 factions who have only, who up until 6 months ago were fighting each other. And you've got problems associated with that, which are quite obvious. You find within whatever faction that there are some people that are really willing to try and make the Federation work, and there are others that aren't. They don't really give 2 flying hoots. And that makes it extremely difficult when you actually are trying to achieve something for the people. And it's one person that can end up stopping all this from occurring. And you find it very frustrating. It gets to the extent sometimes you just want to hit these people. If that's the attitude that these people are adopting, then the Federation will not work. And all it will take is for it to spark off in one little area, like it did the first time, and it will just erupt again. My personal feeling is that probably about 4 or 5 weeks into summer next year, that this whole thing will erupt again.
One of the most brutal flashpoints of the previous year's eruption was here, in the Muslim village of Amici, only a few minutes' drive from the New Zealand camp. In 1992, despite old simmering tensions, the Croat minority in Bosnia was united with a Muslim majority in fighting against their common enemy, the Serbs. But all that changed with Amici. Croat extremists from outside the area massacred the Amici villagers. Women and children were burned alive in their beds, and the Muslim retaliation was swift and unforgiving. For the Santici area, despite its relative calm, the legacy is simple. A population with nothing to lose and ready to fight again.
I would have to. There is no other way. The only alternative that's left to us is to defend ourselves. That's all we were doing. We were just defending ourselves. That's why the United Nations should have protected Croat people.
Just war on the joint patrols then, if we can cover this week's.
Okay. If peace is to continue in the area, the Federation must be allowed to succeed. Dave Gorn has organized a meeting between the two opposing militia commanders to begin the process of negotiating away old and new enmities. Bringing the Muslim and Croat militia commanders together is the first step towards undoing some of the worst damage caused by the war. There are mines to be cleared. There are families to be returned to their homes. All these things will play a part in returning the area to something like normal life. But first of all, there must be an end to the bitter hatred that divides the ethnic groups. Ironically, before the war, the local Muslim militia commander, General Sesic, had been friends with his Croat counterpart, General Filipovic. The two men had been workmates, sharing rides to and from work, before finding themselves on opposite sides of the trenches. It's a relationship that Dave sees some hope of rekindling.
The frustrations are still there, but because the will of the people is further ahead than some of the other areas, there is a greater degree of trust. We don't have the same degree of frustration as the British and some of the other areas. The initial war actually started with a group of extremists from outside the pocket. So they don't see each other as extremists with vendettas as such. That's not saying that they're prepared to forgive each other yet or that they're prepared to trust each other. But it is, they have significantly more trust than some of the other areas because they work together, because they have, prior to the war, had a very good relationship. It has only been one municipality. I think also the fact that they don't have a front line with the Serbians makes it that much easier on both sides.
But the Serbians are not far away. Like a series of Russian dolls, the redefined ethnic areas of central Bosnia nestle one inside the other. Surrounding Santici's Croat pocket is a Muslim area, and beyond that, on the hills, only 20 kilometers from Santici, lies the Serbian front line. In isolated positions on the high slopes, Muslim militia gunners still train their heavy weapons back towards the dominant Serb artillery, and the rough tracks through the ruined villages below are cut by the constant traffic of soldiers to and from the front. In deserted settlements like this, Muslim refugees pushed into the area by the Serbs are forced to live in squalid conditions, unable to move back to their own homes in Serb-held Bosnia because of the continuing warfare. Freedom of movement in the area is still restricted. At checkpoint 5, Kiwis like Corporal Pote Ua keep an eye on civilian and military movement alike.
Sometimes they haven't got the appropriate documentation to actually get through the checkpoint. So the local policemen, BIH, at this point, bring them down here and possibly do a bag search.
You develop a routine and you lose track of the days, that's what I've noticed. And if I didn't have a diary, which I did at night, so I wouldn't know that it was a Saturday or a Sunday. So the time certainly goes by pretty quickly. And what we're actually doing is what we practice. It's a little bit different because we weren't sure what the checkpoints and everything were really going to look like till we got here. But it's what we've been practicing back in New Zealand in that respect. But it's certainly very quiet in this pocket that we're in.
For company doctor Major Nigel Murray, the relative peace of the area means a chance to get out into the community. His clinic in camp is well equipped for the treatment of the New Zealand soldiers, but Nigel believes his responsibilities go beyond simply caring for the company.
We must regard ourselves as part of the community. We've joined this area of Bosnia. We must integrate into it as best we can. And part of that is to facilitate the health environment, the community health environment here. So I feel there's an obligation for us to get out into the community, the local community, and find out what's going on from a health perspective.
There are two main hospitals in the area. In Travnik, the danger from Serb shelling has driven the wards down into the basement rooms which are still filled by the casualties of war.
And they are from
These two soldiers are from the Blessed.
Yeah.
In room after room, the hospital struggles to care for the sick. Wounded soldiers returned from the front lie side by side with innocent civilians who have fallen victim to the indiscriminate mines. It's a drain on resources that stretches the hospital to its limit.
The biggest problems they have are supply and demand. There's a big demand for people to come in and see the doctor or the nurse. Their supplies are limited, and simple things that we take for granted back in New Zealand, like power, don't exist. The hospitals can't predict when the power is going to be on. So there's no way they can plan a sterilization program of their equipment. To this day, the staff are not being paid in any of the hospitals in this community. They're working there because that's their job. And they get food allowances from their governments or local cantonments that provide some rudimentary services. But that's it. They don't get paid. So there's a long way to go to rebuild the health structure here. We can go out and visit the local villages up in the hills within our area of operations, the Kiwi area, and visit the villages and see what's going on, make an assessment of local health, and at the same time offer immediate primary health care services on a mobile clinic basis.
Although Nigel's first priority is to look after the New Zealanders, the continuing good health of the contingent allows time for more and more work with the locals. The village clinics begin to raise the profile of Kiwi Company throughout the area. Dave Gorn's next initiative, the Mine Awareness Program, is to wreak even greater change.
What we're going to do now is we're going to start off and show you what mines look like.
When we arrived here, the mine problem was widespread. Essentially both sides still faced each other over a significant trench system, and both on those trench lines, in the buffer zone and in the houses everywhere, there was a significant mine problem. And in this area alone, about one child every 10 days was actually being killed by mines, and that has virtually finished. And that's been a combination of the Mine Awareness Program and a very aggressive mine clearing, mine marking program that we've run.
I think we have achieved quite a bit. Firstly, with the local people, with the military side of it, and the civilian population. I have a tendency to spend a lot of time in camp, just trying to chase up things. I look after the administration of the team, and that's ensuring that feeding, that they're fed out in the checkpoints, exchange of kit if they've got deficiency in their kit, and it's my job to chase it up and make sure it gets back out to them. And with my job as a platoon sergeant, I get bored, and I've gone out on patrols, village visits like this one here. We have a chat to the local people, and they've told us what's happened around here during the war, what life was like before the war, and during the fighting, especially around in this area here. And there's not much we can say or do. And not only myself, but the remainder of the guys, all the guys that we're quite lucky to be New Zealanders and we live in New Zealand, as opposed to this country or any other country that's in the middle of a war.
By now, 6 weeks into their tour, many of the Kiwis are thinking of home. And their improving relations with the locals only serve to remind them of how far they are from their own families. As the weeks in Santici wear on, the male comes to dominate the Kiwis' thoughts. Problems with delivery through the UN forces system mean frustrating delays, and something of a scramble when news from home finally does arrive. Now the camp is equipped with a TV and video, tapes from home give the soldiers a chance to see the latest additions to their families. For Mike Buist, videos are an immediate way to pass on his experiences to fiancée Julie Milner.
He's seeing some things that most people hopefully will never get to see in their lifetimes. I mean, he's seeing human destruction and people doing the dreadful things that they do to each other in war situations. Mike had been involved in a situation where there was an offensive in the area, and he was doing some work with the hospital, and there was an 8-year-old child that had been injured and was awfully upset and distraught, as you would be, and wanted his mum and dad, and his mum and dad unfortunately been killed in the same offensive. And Mike happened to be there with this little boy and wanted to know where mum and dad was, and Mike had to give him the news. And the little boy cried and was quite distraught, and after some deliberation sort of turned to Mike and sort of said, "Will you be my dad?" And that's just heartbreaking. I mean, for us to sit back here and think about it, and I know the sort of person Mike is, that my heart went out for him as well as for that little boy that has got to go on now without any parents.
Civil war doesn't achieve anything. You end up with a lot of people that are dead, a lot of people that are left homeless, a lot of people without families. Everyone suffers and no one wins. And it can be soul-destroying, heartbreaking, particularly when you're looking in the context of saying what were they trying to initially achieve and what have they achieved, and the two don't meet.
For many of the Kiwi soldiers around Santici, though, life has by now settled down to a gentler pace. With the onset of autumn, patrols through the villages are an almost casual affair, with regular stops to distribute sweets to local children. The friendship of children may be easily won, but by now, the more suspicious adults are beginning to warm to the Kiwis' relaxed attitude too.
We can freeze a drink out of someone, right?
And the villagers, Croat and Muslim alike, match the Kiwis' easy friendliness with a ferocious hospitality based around the national spirit, Slivovic, or sleep in the ditch as it was quickly dubbed by the Kiwis. In many ways, the Vitez pocket remains a calm exception in the center of a warring nation. By now, some of Kiwi Company have begun to accompany British patrols to the Serbian front line in northern Bosnia. There, soldiers like Trooper Craig Woolley find a very different world.
For me personally, it was, you know, you're realising that it's not an exercise, they're actually going for it over there. You know, they're killing each other and that. And when there was at one stage out there before, when the mortars that the Brits said were about, like Stewart was saying, about 200 to 300 metres away, when that first one went off, you actually felt the shockwave of it and that. And you know, something sort of went, you know, that's for real. And, you know, for me that was like, oh wow.
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen in Santici, being in Santici, you get complacent with what you're doing. So it's good to come up here. So it gets you away from that camp and that kind of atmosphere. Up here it's a different atmosphere.
We don't want to go back. This is what we want to see.
The British UN headquarters in the north occupies a school building, literally on the front line with the Serbs. It's here that the Tactical Air Control Party is based, the unit that will provide guidance for any NATO airstrikes. It's also the base for Kiwi Company liaison officer, Captain Ben Green.
What the Muslims are doing here is trying to push out from Magli. It's, now things here are pretty much a stalemate, and the Muslims haven't really got the manpower forces to make a decent offensive to take the Serbs off the hills around the town.
Hi, welcome to the Magli OP.
Just a few points of interest for you. Notice that centre of arc is the red roof house, grey. Yep.
With the Serbian gun positions a stone's throw across the river from the UN headquarters, tension in the area is constant.
In terms of UNPROFOR being threatened, there's been occasions where members of the OC's party or the officer commanding's vehicle have been assaulted and with weapons pointed to the head. It's very tense, and you know, it only takes someone to fire a shot and it just turns into a bloodbath.
And on one of his regular trips up north to the Muslim stronghold of Tishan, Mike Buist has a similar close call.
I was fortunate enough to go up north to Tishan for a recce, and on the way home things got a little bit out of control. We got stopped in Tishan by the local police. 2 warrior tanks arrived. They took up what we call fire positions as such. They moved into an area and covered the local police station. In response, the local police started up their own tank. They trained their gun onto our little Land Rover, and then we were surrounded by police that took up fire positions and cocked their weapons. Quite a frightening experience. It's something that will live with me for the rest of my days.
Experiences like that from the front line might be hard to comprehend on the other side of the world, especially in the rural quiet of New Zealand. But at home in Ashurst, there are different stresses for Company Commander Dave Gaughan's wife, Anna.
Well, we had difficulties because I went into hospital 2 weeks after David went to Bosnia, and I had fairly major surgery on my back, so I was a wee bit stuck. So Dave's mum came to look after us and the children because I couldn't look after them. I think that if she hadn't been able to stay with us, I don't know what would have happened. Perhaps David wouldn't have been able to go. So I guess what makes the decision is your children, and if they start really deteriorating and become terribly insecure and have problems at school, that type of thing, then we'd discuss it, and I think he'd get out. No, I know he would. And I think that's why I feel okay about it. I'm sure that there are men out there who would say to their wives, no, this is my life, this is the army, this is my job, like it or lump it.
For Eileen Vaituru, the problems of separation are even more dramatic.
You know, you wanted a war zone, why go to Bosnia when you got one here? The first week of the deployment, just everything went wrong. You know, the kids played up, and Pat, that's all I can say is Patrick. We had a couple of attempts at suicide. He wanted his dad home, so he decided he'd try all means under the sun. Now, in smaller deployments, if your child gets into trouble or you're beginning to stress out, the army actually bring your husbands straight home. Yeah, they bring their husbands home. And it's just like, well, if I bring my husband home because the child, you know, he's suicidal, you bring him home, then where does it stop? You're actually setting a behaviour, I believe, in my opinion, that you're actually setting a behavioural standard, that if they can't get what they want, then they'll hurt themselves, or they will disrupt the entire house until they get what they want, because they know eventually their father will come home. And that's not my reality. My reality is, sorry, sunshine, he's not. So deal with it.
I had thought about it once, about going home. But, she didn't want me to. She wanted to stay here. I had a long think about it.
I just woke up one day and said, that's it, that's enough. I'm a lot stronger. I can take anyone on now, any problem on, and not crack.
I've got a job to do, and my priority would have been with my platoon, and I've felt like that since I joined up.
As the months pass and autumn gives way to a short but savage winter, the activities of Kiwi Company slow down to match the local hibernation. As the country emerges from its blanket of snow, the early spring brings a new optimism to New Zealand's coordinating commander, Colonel Graham Williams.
Without the UN, this place would not be what it is now. If you go back 12 months, people were fighting each other here, neighbours were fighting each other. The shooting in this particular town only stopped 12 months ago. Since then, the UN has been able to achieve the separation of forces. They have been able to provide the people with a degree of freedom of movement so they can travel from one part of the country to another. Very simple, basic human rights have been re-established, and the real aim is the return to normality. And I think now that you can see the traffic is flowing again, people are moving around the streets, and there really is a semblance of a return to normality. Behind the facade of some of these buildings here, there are actually some pretty flash places that have been rebuilt. 12 months ago, that would have been impossible.
There are the milestones that you can actually physically see. For example, there is greater freedom of movement, there is better medical facilities, there is more food and items in the shops, all that sort of thing. And the actual rebuilding of the infrastructure has occurred in the last 6 months since we've been here. You save one child, say from the Mine Awareness Program, if you saved one child and you've succeeded in something, irrespective of whether the war comes or not. That may happen. But I think there's also the fact that you get personal satisfaction out of it, and that on the national side, certainly the New Zealand Army has matured and grown from this experience over here.
The contingent itself, I think, has changed. I think the soldiers themselves have changed. There'd be hardly a man there who is the same person as he was 6 months ago.
As the soldiers begin their final preparations for leaving, there is time to consider, at last, the nature of those changes.
My tolerance level has increased. You have to, particularly in the nature of the work that I was doing. I think also my attitude towards life in general has changed. I used to be reasonably materialistic, and when you see people that have had everything destroyed and have got nothing left, yet still manage to live, it brings it home to you quite a jolt.
Start moving down from up to 2:30.
By now, the soldiers can think of little but getting home as they pack up for the final parade. Some can't wait to strip off their UN skin, but for many, the Bosnian experience will always stay with them.
I'm certainly more confident in my own ability. I've learnt an awful lot about leadership. I'm still an adventurer, and the experience has been great. There's no doubt about that at all. And part of it is the people that you're with, and the people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. The adventure side of it isn't what you get out of it so much personally, it's more the relationships that you build.
I've given the Colonel the right to reply. Last word.
I know many of you come across here for a shooting war, but it didn't happen. There is tremendous peace in this area, and I think the people of this area will have an awful lot to thank you for in the future.
For New Zealand, number 4, the success that certainly is in this pocket here cannot be underspoken. This is the success story of Bosnia, and that has been UNPROFOR's success, and because we're part of that, I guess New Zealand's success as well. If UNPROFOR left, there is certainly the potential for the conflict to start again. Irrespective of the fact that the Federation is strong, it is still quite tense, and the peace is very fragile. There is definitely a job to be done, certainly in the near future, and probably for quite a long time yet, unfortunately.
That job now falls to New Zealand's 2nd Company of Peacekeepers, drawn from the South Island's Burnham camp. For any bemused onlookers on the tarmac at Split Airport, there can be no doubt that New Zealand is now a presence in the former Yugoslavia. And finally, No doubt for the homesick Kiwi Company that they're really going home. And as the long flight unfolds, there is time, too, for the soldiers to consider what the Bosnian months have meant for those now awaiting their return.
I think being away this period of time, it's given us time to think about things, how we could, or certainly I have thought about how I can improve my relationship with my wife and kids.
He's the most important thing in my life besides my children, but I really needed him. I really needed to support his friendship. I really needed to know that he was there when anything went wrong. I knew he was my backup. But I lost all that when he went to Bosnia. And I think I'm all right now. I'm a pretty strong person. And I don't want to go back to the way I was.
It is going to be different, and you have to get used to living with your partner again. And I'd have to also say, from what I've heard from wives as well, that they find it difficult having a man come back into their lives. The one thing I have learned is that life is the most important thing. And I used to think that life was work. And having worked 7 days a week, 7 months, I've had a guts full of it. And yeah, Julie is the most important thing in my life, and it's going to be the way things are. And if work is keeping me away from her, then there's something wrong.
I have missed him, obviously, but I feel sorry for my husband. All of his children have grown up. That was his sacrifice. He sacrificed it for Bosnia, and I hope it was worth it. I hope the experience was worth it for all of them, for all the fathers. I do hope it was worth it, because the rules have changed.
New Zealand believe that they have a part to play in wider peace of the world and making that a better place. And within that concept, the United Nations, then our efforts in Bosnia have certainly been worthwhile. There is still a peace to keep. It's as simple as that.